Welcome to this week's Iraq in 7 Minutes. I'm EPIC's director, Eric Gustafson, and joining me from across the pond is our lead researcher and analyst, Omar al-Nadawi. For our main topic today, we'll tell you what we know about the phone call that took place on Monday between U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Prime Minister Mohammed al-Sidani of Iraq, a call that was made as militia attacks intensify. But first, here are some of this week's top developments as captured by our latest Iraq report, Isham. Iraqi Prime Minister Sidani met with Turkey's President Erdogan in Istanbul to discuss the war in Gaza and Lebanon, regional security, and water and transport projects. Iraq's Defense Minister Thabit al-Abbasi signed a security cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia and initiated talks with Qatar. Baghdad released new census guidelines to address Kurdish concerns in disputed territories with joint teams and cross-checked data. Also, proposed budget amendments aim to resolve oil export issues with Kurdistan, including new compensation terms. Also this week, UNAMI Chief Mohammed al-Hassan met Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani in Najaf, who urged the UN to work hard with the Iraqi government to preserve stability by achieving the following: a meritocracy in senior appointments, preventing foreign interference, strengthening the rule of law and anti-corruption efforts, and restoring a state monopoly on violence. So now turning to you, Omar. On November 4th, Secretary of State Antony Blinken called Prime Minister Sidani, urging him to fulfill Iraq's commitment to protect U.S. personnel and to prevent Iran-backed militias from launching unauthorized attacks from Iraqi territory. We understand that Blinken also warned Sidani of the risk of Israeli retaliation if these groups continue to escalate attacks on Israel. Omar, with these warnings from the US, how serious is the threat of further escalation, and what impact could it have on Iraq's internal stability and regional security?
Hi, Eric. There is growing anxiety that the conflict could be about to expand. There are expectations that Iran is planning a new mass attack on Israel that involves launching missiles and drones from Iraqi territory, either alone or in conjunction with missile and drone launches from Iran itself. So there is an expectation that the militias are going to get more involved in this war on Iran's side. This week have seen a rather heavy escalation in their operations against Israel. This week, we counted reports of 22 different or separate incidents in which the militias launched explosive drones against various Israeli targets. This is the highest number that we have tracked in 1 week since the militias started attacking Israel in the aftermath of October 2023. We've also noticed that you alluded to this earlier in when you talked about the meeting between the chief of UNAMI and Ayatollah Sistani, and I think the timing and the content of that conversation is not a coincidence. That it stressed the points of avoiding or preventing regional foreign interference of all forms, and also when it comes to restoring state monopoly over funds, because the way things are developing in Iraq right now are increasing the likelihood that the country is going to get pulled into a conflict in which the government itself has not really made the decision of war and peace, but non-state actors are making the decisions of war and peace. And rather disturbing, actually, is the way the militias have responded to Ayatollah Sistani's words. A spokesperson for Kataib Sayyid al-Shuhada, which is one of the main factions of the so-called Islamic resistance in Iraq, which have played a major role in conducting these attacks on Israel. They said, well, what Ayatollah Sistani said about keeping weapons in the hands of the state does not really concern the resistance weapons, because our weapons are legitimate. It is legitimate to and legal to resist occupation, whether it's American or Israeli or any kind of occupation, under both divine laws and temporal laws. And this is obviously a very loose interpretation of the situation of Sistani's words and of what occupation is and what is a legitimate resistance to it. So obviously the militias are trying to justify continuation of their operations, and this does not bode well for, I think, Iraq's role in this escalating regional conflict. And Iraq is not going to be immune. And if we go back to the call between Blinken and Sudani, there was a clear, as it was reported, that there was a clear communication of the fact that the US would not be able to stop Israel from attacking Iraq, from striking inside Iraq. And Iraq is going to be very, very exposed to destruction that way.
That's very concerning. And at any point, has the Prime Minister, Sudani, ever made a clear statement about the militias needing to fall under state control?
So far, we have not seen the Prime Minister publicly put pressure on these militant groups, on these factions, and exposing the fact that their actions are risking not only themselves, but they're risking all of Iraq's interests, on all of Iraq's security. And that is not something that I think a government should fail to address. This is a serious situation.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Omar. Yeah, definitely something to continue to watch. This has been this latest episode of Iraq in 7 Minutes. For more news and analysis, visit us at enablingpeace.org. If you value this content, please like and share it with others and subscribe to our channel. I also should mention this week was an election for the United States. We have the result. President Trump will be starting his second administration early next year. So we will be talking more about that. What will that mean for Iraq and the region? Until next week, thank you so much for joining us. Maslama.